Well, I think if you look at the dollar, it's the flip side of risk appetite here. It's a necessary element to see global asset prices coming back is to see a weaker dollar. So the reason you're seeing the bounce in equities, the bounce in risk appetite, you're seeing a weaker dollar. And we saw, if we look back at the previous cycle in 2008, 2009, that big dollar squeeze we saw as the world scrambled for dollar funding again, as we had this contagion across asset markets. It was within the same week that the dollar peaked out and global equity markets, or at least the U.S. equity market, bottomed. I think we'll see a similar situation this time around. If we've seen the bottom in markets, we've likely seen the top in the dollar. If not, then I think the dollar could go back towards its highs. I think the Fed is going to do everything it takes and will eventually get there in providing enough liquidity. And the dollar is very strong.
John, I'm looking at a wall of the Asian markets this morning. The Nikkei is off 3%, the Hong Kong market's down 1%, and the Shanghai Composite is off 1.5%. What bounce in risk assets are we discussing?
Well, not just a bounce in risk assets, but a sense that we're getting ahead of this credit contagion and stabilizing in terms of the outlook for credit, for insolvencies, wherever this situation takes us. So I think it's early to call a whole bottom in the situation. I think it's going to depend on the nature of how we get through this COVID-19, not just slowing down the case count, slowing down the death count, but how we sort of emerge from it on the other side. And that's the question that I just haven't seen any answers for, and makes us cautious in trying to forecast anything in the short to medium term, because that is the underlying question here.
Yeah, and John, very good morning to you from Downing Street as well. Until we know more about the progression of the pandemic and the infection rate and the mortality rate, until we know we're getting on top of that, does any economic trade, any financial market trade actually make sense, apart from going to safe havens? Is it worth any of our viewers trying to put any money on the market looking for some form of bounce until we know what's going on with the pandemic itself?
A great question. I think, for those that were not fully exposed coming into this and have some cash on the sidelines, surely buying periodically into various investments is an approach. But, what tends to happen in these crises is that babies get thrown out with the bathwater. And, the question is, how low can things go before we see recovery? But a great question. I think one of the safer trades, eventually will be to sell this U.S. dollar, because it simply has to go lower. It's very strong. Eventually get ahead of this crisis. But in the meantime, look at something like the Norwegian krone, the oil price. These things can get very, very, very extended and very extended beyond arguably long-term fundamentals.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.